Hello, everybody. Welcome to our 2024 Annual Synapse Conference. My name is Spencer, and I am joined by my co-lead, Ariana. We are the two co-VPs of Synapse's conference committee this year, and we have had the honor of helping to create this wonderful event. We have a couple of points to make before we get to our keynote speaker. The first is, for those of you who aren't familiar, Stanford Synapse, we are a student-run organization. Our goal is to sort of combat the isolation that individuals with traumatic brain injury often face. And we do this through two main programs, the first of which is a peer support group, which is held bi-weekly, where community members with traumatic brain injury can come to discuss their stories and to share with people of the same community. The other is the GLIAL program, where we partner Stanford students with individuals with traumatic brain injury to foster some companionship. We have two other committees. One, this conference committee. We have many of our members here. They help us to run this wonderful conference. And then we also have an events committee, which throughout the year put together events both for our club or for our organization, as well as for community members. I'll hand it off to Ariana for some others.
So this conference itself, it's kind of a new thing for the club, but Synapse itself has existed for a little while, and this year actually marks our 10th year, which is pretty exciting because it's kind of nice to see a club continue for so long and kind of have a nice shining presence. And that's just helping to spread awareness about something that's so important. So if you didn't grab a schedule on the way in, basically today is going to consist of hearing from leaders in the field, so doctors, researchers who are working on things regarding traumatic brain injury. Second half, we'll be hearing from some peers who are leading a lot of brain health initiatives. And then we also have a little hands-on activity in the middle with some live brain tissue, which should be exciting. I hope you guys are looking forward to that. But yeah, we'll just get started, and we hope you guys enjoy.
I'm going to hand it off to Catherine, one of our wonderful committee members, who will introduce our keynote speaker.
This year, we're pleased to present our first Biotech speaker for the Synapse Conference. This is Dr. Deborah Zelinsky. She founded the Mind Eye Institute in Illinois. Mind Eye combines optometric solutions to treat neurological imbalances. So she's done a lot of exciting work in this field, and we're super happy to have her.
Thank you.
Thanks for all of you coming out in the rain to be here. I can start a little bit. I wanted to thank everybody. Being at Stanford is an opportunity that's incredible, so thank you. And I hope that we're not too boring. I was told that college students have a small attention span, so don't speak for an hour and just be boring. So we've got all kinds of demos in between and videos, and it should be interesting, but hopefully learn something. Okay. So I call this the secret life of retinal cells, how eyeglasses can rewire brain activity. Because people don't realize that if you take the brain and you pull a chunk of it downwards, you get the spinal cord. And if you pull a chunk of it forward, you get a retina, the lining of the eye. And the retina and the brain and the spinal cord all together are called your central nervous system. So a lot of people don't realize that the retina is a part of the central nervous system, and that when you put eyeglasses on, you're actually directly affecting the central nervous system and modulating neurological activity. So we're going to have an hour of fun, and then I think Catherine has 2 or 3 more hours planned of more fun. So the I Love My Brain conference, how you described it, reminded me of Kevin Pierce, because he has an organization called Love Your Brain. He's an Olympian who was beating Shaun White in snowboarding, and then right before the Olympics, he had a big crash and a brain injury. It made him see double. He almost lost his life, and he went to, I think it was 16 eye doctors, maybe 15. But he came to me after the other 15 or 16, and we fixed his double vision because he's such an athlete. He was determined to work, and he worked. So the point is, brains have neuroplasticity. Now, he found me because of Clark Elliott, who had written a book called The Ghost in My Brain, and that's called How a Concussion Stole My Life and How the New Science of Brain Plasticity Helped Me Get It Back. So Clark Elliott was a guy who was rear-ended by a car and had a concussion, and for 8 years was running around without his brain working right. And he had eyeglasses which linked his eyes and ears, and all of a sudden he started coming back within 3 weeks. And then it took him another 1.75 years, so it's almost 2 years after he had his injury, working with my eyeglasses as well as Donnelly Marcus's Designs for Strong Minds puzzles. But doing that allowed him to get his brain back. He wrote this book on neuroplasticity. It came out in 2015, but he had seen me in 2008. So what we're going to talk about today is biotech startups, neuroplasticity, and how glasses can rewire the brain after injury. So the key points we'll be mentioning, as I said, was the retina is part of the brain, and the really neat part of retinal processing is that it's mapped with a point-to-point location representation in the brain. So if you shine light at one spot on everybody's retina, then signals go through one particular spot in your brain. And you shine the light on another spot, and the signals go to a different spot in the brain. So there's a mapping, and you can use the retina to do retinal mapping, which is part of brain mapping. So later we'll be talking about what the brain mapping groups are doing. Any of you know that some of you have thick glasses. If you were to put your thick glasses on another person who doesn't need them, the other person would say, ugh, these aren't comfortable. I hate these. They're not good. I'm dizzy. I'm nauseous. Get them off of me. And the really interesting thing is that you understand clearly that the wrong glasses can make you feel bad, but you might not realize that the right glasses can make you feel good. So a lot of people who see 20/20 still need eyeglasses, but they need it to feel good and not use so much energy and be more comfortable navigating through space. So we use glasses at the Mind Eye Institute that are for comfort as opposed to for eyesight. Comfort's on the inside, the eyesight's on the outside. So we'll also be talking about this Biotech Brain Park in Los Angeles that hopefully will be open by 2026. And the Neurotech Convention that's this coming in February, that's also in Los Angeles. So Mind Eye Institute's tagline is Connecting Optometry with Neuroscience. So I put together a little bit of what happened. Optometry started as an organization in 1898, so roughly 1900. So for roughly 125 years, that's how long optometrists have been around. And it has been evolving that originally it was all about eyesight. Then it turned into also eye health. So in about 1928, so 30 years later, people were saying, wait a minute, eyesight alone is not everything. There's peripheral eyesight too. So you have central eyesight to see details and zoom in and think about things. And then you have the peripheral eyesight for survival and navigating. So if you're driving, you barely use central eyesight unless you want to read a license plate. But you use peripheral eyesight all the time. So in 1928, this group said, we need to work with peripheral eyesight because it blends with central eyesight. And then a few years later, somebody said, wait a minute, when you put tints and colors on, it's relaxing the whole person's body, or it's making them feel different, or it's giving them energy. So tints are doing something to the autonomic nervous system. And then about 40 years after that, people got into visual perception. They're talking about visualizing. And about 20 years after that, somebody said, wait, there's new research. So the retinal signals that come in don't just affect eyesight, they also affect posture. So if I move to this side of the room, then if you want to look at me with your central eyesight, you have to move your neck. If I go to the other side of the room, you're moving your eyes and your neck. And then if I were to be able to go much taller, you'd have to move your head up and down. So the retinal signals are linked very much with neck position and body position. And about from 90 to 20, so another 30 years later, something called STIVO opened, and that is an optometric education module run by Stefan Collier. And it's him is Stefan, I believe that's the ST, and Yvonne, which is his wife. That's where the STIVO was. Going through the neuroscience aspect, 1969 was when the Society for Neuroscience was begun. There was a doctor show on television that also started then, and one of the episodes talked about the doctor prescribing, telling the patient, you've got stomach problems, go to see an eye doctor. And in the show, the patient went to the eye doctor, came back and said, thank you, doctor. Now my stomach is all fine just because you told me to get eyeglasses. I didn't realize the eyes are connected to the stomach. So in 1969, when the Society for Neuroscience began, people knew that the eyes and the stomach were very connected, but optometrists didn't know it. And now we're 50 years later, 55 years later, and people are just starting to learn that, oh my goodness, when you put glasses on, it affects the stomach. And they're starting to learn why from neuroscience. So in 1994, there's a light therapy association that opened to do photobiomodulation. And then the Brain Mapping Association, this is Society for Brain Mapping and Therapeutics, began in 2003. They're 20 years old. And then 2014 is Neurophotonics, which is using light to affect the nervous system. And then MEI's Mind-Eye Institute, that's my organization, where we started using auditory space and using eyeglasses to change listening ability. So I'll get off of my soapbox and show you a little video after you understand that there are non-image forming pathways and image forming. So if you look here, the back, the visual cortex, that's where your eyesight is, that's image forming. And the middle, where the brainstem is there, the midbrain, that is non-image forming. Non-image forming would be like posture, and then also sleep centers, and emotional regulation, and digestion, and appetite, and blood glucose, and a lot of other things that have nothing to do with eyesight, but they're linked. So here's a video, I think, will it play on here? Sorry, we're having a little trouble. Well, what that video is me juggling. You say juggling uses your peripheral eyesight and not the central eyesight, and how the peripheral eyesight is really important, but it's not tested. That regular eye exams test central eyesight, and they're using a machine, an instrument to block off your peripheral eyesight. And they're using lenses that were designed with standardization in 1862, which is the middle of the Civil War. So in the middle of the Civil War, somebody came and said, we need to make a standardized optometry group. So we're going to say, okay, let's make this 20/20 chart. And they made lenses and they chart, and everything's very carefully mathematically calculated, so that one click of the instrument would be equivalent to one line on the chart. And it's a brilliant thing, but it was done 150 years ago. And that was when people were reading books that were stationary and using their central eyesight to look at things. But in reality, the world now is all moving targets, and it's your peripheral eyesight that judges moving targets. Let me see if this works. No. So let's see how it works. So far, I'm hoping you get that the retina is an extension of the brain. So if brain circuitry is disrupted from a brain injury, then retinal processing is affected. That the retina is a two-way portal, that it's not only light coming from the outside, but it's also what's going on the inside. So how many of you, like now, if you're busy in your head or you're thinking or you're texting, you're doing something inside your head, how many of you can tune out the environment? Lots of you. And that tuning out means shutting off your peripheral retina. So you have to think of it in terms of all the outside eyesight, all the inside visualization, and everything else, the non-image forming pathways connected to the retina. So if there's one thing you walk out of here with today, it should be that the retina is an extension of brain tissue. It's pulled, the brain is stretched, that the retina is getting signals from the inside of the brain outwards to turn on or turn off, and that the outside movement is sending signals back into your brain. So it's a two-way street. So let's start with something. I don't know how to push it so that it's in slide mode again. So you got to look at clues in front of you, which is on the outside, and link them with what's in the inside. So did somebody solve that puzzle and tell me what vowel you would need? What vowel would you pick if this was Wheel of Fortune? What? You get A, E, I, O, U to choose from, but there's a rule that says that E is the most commonly used vowel. So this person only goes on the inside of her head and says, I learned to pick E if somebody says pick a vowel. But every vowel except E is used here. So if you're not looking at all the clues that are around you, you're missing something in the world. You have to be aware of the additional information. So for instance, for children, they don't realize when they see an Amazon purchase, they just know that they want something, their parents click on the computer, and it shows up at their door in 2 days. They don't know there's a price to it, there's a bank account, there's a payment, you have to earn the money to put in the bank account. They just see that the toy comes from Amazon. So as an optometrist, we know that there's a behind the scenes influencing posture and sleep and appetite, and that's retinal processing. And we're in control of it as an optometrist, but many people don't think of that. You don't think that if you have neck pain, it could be an eyeglass prescription, or lower back pain could be an eyeglass. So this is the big picture. You have a conscious mind that moves things by intention. You have a subconscious mind that moves things by habit. But feeding into your mind is your body from there with all the sensors. And feeding into your subconscious mind is also the environment. So you got your environment, your body, feeding into the mind. But the conscious, what you're aware of, is way up here. And all this other stuff is going on in the background. So the background is really, really important to look at. When you get patients who come in with diseases that's in the body, it's going to affect what the mind gets. So if I could take a magic wand and wave it over all of you and make you all have a fever and a stomach ache and be nauseous and get a headache and have an itch, all of those things, if your toe is itching, your mind will be so bombarded by body signals that it's going to completely shut down the outside environment. So the retina turns on and off depending on what the body is doing. The more comfortable the body, the more open the retina gets, the more light that it's taking in and processing. And when they talk about movements, there's all these different eye movements we can measure. So let's show you how all the movements fit into that picture. So we go back and realize, let's see, here. I'm going to be changing the light, and I know what I'm changing because I can use a prism, a lens, or a filter, and then that change is going to affect movements here. So why don't we have you come up, the lady in the white shirt there? You. What's your name?
Kimberly.
Kimberly. So Kimberly is going to wear these glasses. So can you walk straight forward and back? She has no problem. Now walk backwards. No, back. Stop. So she has no problem walking. She's got her posture, her movements. She's learned how to walk. She's no problem. Now walk through these, but these you can hold it up in front of your glasses, and then walk. And then walk backwards. Okay, stop. Now what did you notice?
It's a little bit more like I don't know how to describe it, but it's distorted. Yeah.
So she's saying it's slightly distorted. We're going to turn them a different way. Walk this way. Walk a little farther forward. We can't see on the floor, but she's walking at an angle. And then walk backwards. And she's also walking an angle. What's happening there?
I mean, like my is like more, it's like working, like everything is slightly.
So this way, she sees a tilt. But you didn't say that you saw a tilt the other way. You saw a distortion.
Not really
Curve.
I feel like it was like a curve.
Yeah. So these glasses do the same thing, whether they're hitting her right hemisphere or her left hemisphere. But she's saying that one way she saw a tilt where the whole floor with the world was tilted, and the other way she saw a curve and a distortion. So her brain is completely processing different. The way she perceived accurately is when the left hemisphere was activated. The way she perceived, not quite, she was getting all the same information, but she wasn't able to put it together with the background and the target. So her movements changed with the second way. The one where she perceived the tilt, she was able to walk on an angle both ways. The other way where she just saw it weird, she didn't. She walked pretty straight. So the point of this is that you can use this to check different aspects of brain function. Now she's scooted back to her chair before we tried up and down.
Oh my God.
So we'll take somebody else for that. So Catherine, do you want to come up here? Thank you, Kimberly.
You stay close to the board because your feet.
And here is, just can hold those up in front of you. And then walk forward. Watch her upper torso and walk backwards. What do you notice? What's happening? Everything is squished down. So I'm not hearing anybody say things are blurry, because blurry comes from your centralized sight. We're not touching your centralized sight. Watch her upper body. What's happening there? Stop. What's happening there? Yeah. So she sees the floor tilted upward. Now, if you watched her body, her upper body was this way with one of them and this way with the other one. So what I'm trying to show you is that posture is very much attached to retinal processing. And that's what we had talked earlier. Now they do it at different levels. She's not consciously moving her body. It's happening at a reflex level. Those are skeletal muscles. If we could put a little electrodes in the stomachs and measure visceral muscles, you would find that the stomach tenses up when people get scared or the floor is tilting. So the visceral muscles also change. But the really fun part about optometry is that we're in control of what your posture is. So if you have a lower back problem, you can put glasses on to lean forward or glasses on to tilt back. If you have a knee problem, you can put glasses on to tilt the floor one way or tilt the floor the other way, and that makes your weight bearing shift. So we work a lot with physical therapists because the physical therapists find somebody with a bad knee, so they're favoring it, but if you tilt the floor, they'll lean one way. And it's done at a reflex level through the body only, through the brainstem, and not using cortical systems. So if you have bad posture and somebody says, oh, your shoulders are bad, sit up straight, push your shoulders back. You could do that and hear that forever. Same as children when they put their elbows on a table and somebody says, take your elbows off the table, off the table. When you hear it enough, eventually you form a new habit. But that's going through anticipatory and learned habits. That's through the mind, the cortex. But if you want to go through subcortical changes, it goes through skeletal muscles, change the retina. So if you want your shoulders back, make the floor tilt downhill. If all of a sudden the floor went steeply downhill, you'd all be leaning backwards without anybody telling you to. So that goes through the reflex center. So I now want to try this bell. That was this, aftergym perception. So perceptions are changing depending on your viewpoint, which is based on emotions and other things. So when Kimberly was walking and was like, yeah, the floor's a little different, it's a little tilted, we get other people, and when they walk, they put the same glasses on and they freeze. They get into fight or flight or freeze mode, and they're like stuck because they're so scared. Everything looks terrible. They can't pick their foot up. They don't know where anything is. So different people react differently, even if the actual stimuli is the same. So here's an example of that. The father is viewing the child as within his reach so he can catch the child. The child feels like he's way up in the air and having a blast. But the mother views this to be freaked out, like, oh no, my child's so high, what's going to happen? Perception is different, even if the actual stimuli is the same. The retina is part of the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord and retina. And you can see how in the neural tube during development, the retina branches off. And it's linked very much with the hypothalamus, with the hippocampus, with everything. And there are signals that go, and I'll show you later, from the retina to 3 different main parts. One part of the brain would be posture centers, which would be leading with the cerebellum and the midbrain. And the second thing it links with would be the hypothalamus. And then the third thing is eyesight. But the eyesight is slower. Now we wanted to show how the eyes and ears were connected. So let's see, another person, I think from this side of the audience. How about the man in the pink shirt way back there? Can you hear me if I put this down? If I talk loud enough, can you still hear me? So, what's your name?
Mario.
Mario. Face this way. So, Mario is going to try to find this bell and see what happens. The light's shining in his eyes, so we'll see if this works or not. Close your eyes, and wherever you hear the bell, touch it. Okay, and then keep your eyes closed. We'll try to touch the bell right here. One finger. So he can find it there, no problem. So let me just do something. Now Mario's got his eyes closed. So all the light going on his retina is going a certain way. Now we're going to do the same thing over again. Touch the bell. Keep your eyes closed. And keep your eyes closed again. Ready? So now you can open your eyes. Thank you, Mario. Why could you not touch it before?
I'm not sure. It wasn't where it sounded like it was.
It wasn't where it sounded like it was. So what I did is I put a big, thick lens that's not for you, like the wrong lens, and I held it in front of your eye, like this. So he consciously didn't know what was in front of his eye, but the light bent the wrong way. And the wrong light messed up his ears. Why? Because his eyes and ears are connected, at least on this side, connected correctly. And when I messed up the eyes to keep the same relationship, his ears messed up. So you perceive the sound location in a totally different place. That's part of vision. So if you close your eyes and you hear the bells on this side of you, so if I walk and move and you're going to hear it, you know I'm on the other side of you. So you can open your eyes. That's visualization. That is a visual system, but it's not an eyesight system. So eyesight and visualization of space, two different things. So when he's got these glasses on, the glasses he has were prescribed by somebody covering up an eye, blocking off the periphery of the other eye, looking straight ahead at a stationary target and saying which is better, one or two, clear or blurry, and he picked the clearest one. So this eye's clear and this eye's clear when he's looking straight ahead at a non-moving detail, but the periphery is not balanced, which is why this side isn't good for listening and that side is, which is why he put himself way at the edge of that room, because when he's listening, he's now listening from this side, not that side. Because if he were sitting over here, he wouldn't be able to process anything I said. So thank you. So you could use people, when he walked in the room, his brain subconsciously said, I want to listen, it sounds interesting. He put himself way, way over there. There's a million other chairs here. He chose that one. So it's very fascinating to me how your auditory and your visual system processes differently. And when they're not linked together, then you have to choose, because your brain has to make a choice. Which one do I use? And the neat thing about eye-ear connections is they develop. You're not born with them. So just like hand-eye coordination, if you have a 2-year-old and you throw them a ball, you don't expect them to catch it. And when they miss, you go, well, because you're 2. But if you have a 12-year-old and you throw them a ball, you expect them to catch it. And if they don't, you're saying, why are you such a klutz? You should be catching it. So hand-eye coordination develops, but so does eye-ear coordination. It's 2 sensory inputs that come in, they got to blend, same as hands and eye coordination. So the eyes and the ears, if they don't connect, which they don't in about 22% of people, then when children go to school and they're faced with reading, which requires sounds phonetically and sights, like sight words, they got to pick because they can't do both. Or they can't watch a teacher while listening to a teacher, or they can't visualize at the same time they're hearing everything. So it's really important to look at an eye-ear connection and look at what's actually going on in the retina. So this is a retina all blown up. There's rods and cones over here, and then there's bipolar cells and ganglion cells. And these green things are glial cells, because the retina runs on glutamate, and the rods and cones don't keep glutamate. They don't store it. They get it from the glial cells, and the glial cells store it as glutamine, but the glial cells don't have it all the time. They get it out of the blood glucose. So you got the blood flow here, and the blood vessels are coming in and getting into the glial cells. The glial cells are getting into rods and cones, and you get glutamate to run the retina. So when you have, but there's also histamine coming from the brain, coming back. There's histamine receptors, there's GABA, there's glycine, there's dopamine, there's serotonin. There's a lot of stuff going on at the retinal level. There's 126 million rods and cones. And there's only 1 million or 1.2 million exiting neurons from the optic nerve. So you got 126 million sensors that have 1.2 million exiting neurons. So the funneling effect is 100 to 1. It's from about 120 million down to 1 million, 1.2 million. So all of that funneling happens at this level, just in the retina. And in October of 2021, a new retinal cell was discovered that nobody even knew existed. They could only see it on nanoscopes, not microscopes. So retinal processing is fascinating. And if you want to know how big 126 million is, If you think of a head of hair, the head of hair has about 100,000 strands of hair on it. You would need 1,250 people with 100,000 strands of hair on their head. So you have to have a room full of 1,250 people to have 125 million strands of hair. So if you took a giant room, 1,250 people, took all the hairs off of all their heads, that's how many strands would equal the amount of rods and cones in one eye. It's a lot. And they're so tiny, so they're packed really tightly. And the 1.2 million neurons that exit the eye, that would be the equivalent of a much, much smaller amount. So I just put some stuff into to show you that the retina has the highest metabolic demand in the whole body. It's used all the time, even when you're sleeping. There's a whole glymphatic system that clears out. The glymph system links with the lymph system in the body. So retinal hemodynamic perturbations play a critical role in the pathogenesis of lots of ocular diseases. The retinal vascular structure provides metabolic support for the neural cells and the glial cells. So you're basically saying the blood vessels, the glial cells, and the neurons all work together. You can't just sit and say, oh, the retina is made up of nerves. You got to say, but the nerves are linked with glial cells, and the glial cells are linked with blood vessels. So when you have patients that are on medications, like serotonin, SSRIs, like Prozac or Zoloft or Paxil, those types, those affect retinal signals, mostly in the center retina. So there's a large body of evidence demonstrated that serotonin is a neuromodulator in the retina. So you play around with serotonin by taking drugs, it's going to change retinal processing. So if I have a patient who's on Paxil, they're going to be processing totally differently than a patient who's on Adderall for ADD, which is going to play with dopamine levels. So it's kind of interesting how you can start going down. A lot of you are in neuroscience, so and you have backgrounds in the calcium channels and potassium channels and all the ion channels, but those are changing. The action potentials are changing depending on what's in the bloodstream and depending on what kind of attitude they have. So you got the three things I talked about. The retina is connected. So you have the 126 million sensors at the retina. You have 1.2 million signals coming out, and they split. Most of them go for seeing. And here's your central eyesight, your peripheral eyesight. Those are your eyesight ones. But all the ones at the top link with how am I pathways, and all the ones at the bottom link with where am I pathways. These are skeletal muscles. Those are visceral things. That's got endocrine and limbic functions in it. This is more muscular. So, and these are unconsciously processed. Both sets are unconscious processing. So to put it in a picture, we did the bell already. Put in a picture, you could say this. The eyesight goes into eyesight, space and time and visual perception. And then you have the how am I and where am I pathway. The space and time is where and what is it. It's all about the target. So when you talk about eyesight, it's all about what's outside and the target on the outside. The visual perception is on the inside, like when Mario was visualizing the space around him. And then you have the where am I, which is more posture related. So we need to stress door. Sensory mismatches. Okay, so the lady standing up with the blue shirt who's just come in, can you come down here? Have you demonstrate this? Thank you. Would have been Kimberly's demonstration, but she scooted back to the chair too quickly. So here, I'm going to have you feel this and see if it feels straight. Feels straight. Okay, now I'm going to have her put this on top of your glasses and see if it looks. Yeah, so put that on top of your glasses. Do you see this straight? You don't. So she doesn't see it straight anymore, it's curved. Is it curved like convex or concave? Yeah, it's curved convex and it's like a curve. So now I want you to watch your hand. So put your hand here and feel while you watch your hand go up and down. Does it feel curved when you watch your hand? Yeah. So when her eyes are matched with her hand and she's watching her eyes and her hand go up and down the curve, she's perceiving it curved, she's feeling it curved. So her mind gets the sense. So we're talking about visual perception. She perceives it curved. Now just put those back on. Now look up at the top, but just make your hand go up and down. But don't look. So just don't look at your hand. How do you feel it, straight or curved? And then now if you look down here, and your eyes are down here, also put your hand up, but keep watching here. And what does it feel like? It's curved. So she's feeling it curved, even whether her eyes are on it or whether her eyes are off of it. Yeah. So what we're looking for is the eye and the hand. Those are sensory inputs. And when they're mismatched, if your eyes see it curved and your hand feels it curved, her brain says they got to match. And other people can do that and say, when my eyes are not involved, if my eyes are away and I just feel, then it's not curved at all. Then they feel it straight. So when their hand is the only thing giving them signals, they feel it straight. When their eyes and their hand are giving it signals, they match and they feel it curved. So they can get false information. There's something auditory like that too, called the 1976, the McGurk phenomenon. So McGurk was a guy in 1976 who videotaped somebody saying the word ba 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 ba. And to say the word ba ba ba, your mouth is closed. If you say, then he had the videotape saying ga ga ga, which your mouth is open. So from a sensory aspect, he spliced the sound of ba 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 into the mouth picture that was open. So the person was saying ga ga ga, but they took away the sound and they replaced the sound with ba ba ba. And they would say to somebody, close your eyes and listen. What are they saying? And you hear ba ba ba. And then you open your eyes and you watch their mouths, and your brain says it can't be ba because their mouth didn't close. It can't be ga because it didn't sound like ga. So there's a phenomenon where you switch and your brain just makes up that it's saying da, because da sounds like ba, like Debbie and Betty sound similar, but the d that you have an open mouth for. So your brain is readjusting when sensory systems are mismatched.
I'm not sure how to explain this exactly, but I happen to have, according to the optometrist, I have astigmatism. But yet, when I look at lines, they're straight. No matter what, I see no astigmatism.
Right.
So how does that?
Well, you know what? That's my last four
The
slides.
second part of the question is, are some people with astigmatism able to adapt?
Yes. The answer is yes. His question is, he has astigmatism, but he doesn't see things on slants or curve. He sees them straight. And are people able to adapt? And the answer is yes. And I've got about 4 slides on that at the end. So hang in there. I'll answer that question. So I just want to go through a quick overview of what we talked about so far. We talked that unconsciously you got the retina leading to the optic nerve, leading to the brainstem and cerebellum for the primitive brain. You got the subconscious and the preconscious leading to the limbic system for your emotional brain. And then you get to the visual cortex. And consciously, the visual cortex for the peripheral eyesight, planning and navigating, and then the conscious part of the visual cortex for thinking. So there's a whole bunch that happens, and here's a diagram to show it. The outside and the inside. These are the precursors to aiming and focusing. So when this man's optometrist tested his aiming and focusing and said he has astigmatism, they're not looking at the precursors. The precursors are your primitive brain that says, where am I balanced, and am I comfortable, and how I feel, skeletal and visceral. And then, am I safe, do I care, and do I find it easy? Because if I don't care about my environment, I'm not going to bother aiming and focusing at the target. But if I don't feel safe, I'm going to start scanning and hyper. I'm going to be looking around like crazy. So my retina is going to be on scanning mode if I don't feel safe. And if it's on scanning mode, I can't aim and focus. But if I don't care, I'm also not going to aim and focus. If I don't care, I'm not going to rev up the sympathetic nervous system. If I'm scared and I don't feel safe, then I'm going to get more noradrenaline. So the neurotransmitters are going to be different, and the retinal activity is going to be different depending on what's going on in the emotional brain, the primitive brain. And you don't even get to the thinking brain. This all happens before you aim and focus. And if it does, you're going to have, oops, I'm sorry. If it does, you're going to have problems. Let me go back to what she pushed here. So this is what you just asked about astigmatism. Astigmatism expands space side to side. So this is one type of astigmatism. This is a different type of astigmatism. And these are different types of astigmatism. So there's 4 different ways. So basically what astigmatism means is that you are looking at the world through a cropped effect. It's being cropped this way or this way or this way. So whatever you're looking at is going to look straight. But what will happen is if you look at, say, a plus sign, one line will look darker than the other line. Or if you look at an X, one line will be darker than the other line. And you're saying you don't have, and that's even without your glasses?
As far as I'm concerned, I'm a general contractor, and I do inspections on buildings. And first thing I see, I don't even think about it, I see the ceiling line, because if that's not straight, there's a problem in the room.
Right.
Okay. And same thing on the corners and so on.
Right.
So I'm visually, I know that I'm seeing normally,
Mhm.
and there's no color, no color or shape distortion.
Right.
Yet
For some reason, if you
are constantly trying to give me astigmatism glasses.
so somebody convinced him that like El Greco's paintings, which are all weird and distorted because he had astigmatism, means that everybody with astigmatism sees distorted. And the answer is no, they don't. Many people with astigmatism see like you do. But first of all, it depends how much astigmatism you have, because you get a quarter of a unit, a half unit, or 4 units. And what he's saying is he's a contractor who looks at ceiling lines and can tell whether they're straight or not, and very accurately. That has nothing to do with astigmatism. It has to do with the clearness. So if you can see a ceiling line straight, then there's a different line at 90 degrees away from it, which would be up and down, or maybe on an angle. That I don't know which direction your astigmatism's in. It might be on an angled direction. If it's on an angled direction, you'll see perfectly straight sideways and up and down, but you may not on angle. But some direction, if you took a heavy black marker and made either an X or a plus, then and you rotate it around, there's going to be one direction where it's going to look a little more pale on one way than the other way.
That's not I'm going to say. I have no distortion.
Right, but you don't. So the answer is
different diagrams.
Yeah.
And I still see it normal.
yeah, and I agree with you because I'm a high astigmat and I see normal.
This is a personal question. I'm asking it and trying to relate to the different things you're saying.
The answer is that what astigmatism does is it crops out part of your retina. So you're telling me that you're using the leftover part of your retina just fine, which means that whatever signals are going into your brain are just fine. So the point is, astigmatism does not mean distortion. Astigmatism is a measurement of only central eyesight, not peripheral eyesight. You could be using your peripheral eyesight to judge the lines, because the peripheral eyesight judges size, shape, distance, and speed. So central eyesight is where they're measuring astigmatism in. The peripheral eyesight's a whole different thing. But the 20/20 assessments are becoming a thing of the past. It's good enough for the general population, but it's insufficient for a lot of patients. And what you can do is look at all these different aspects rather than just seeing what a target is. When you got the astigmatism in your glasses, it was to make the target sharper when it was non-moving. But it can create distortion in the periphery, but if you're not using your periphery to full extent, it won't matter. You will not perceive the distortion. But there is a difference in color of thickness that you might not be perceiving because it might be very subtle. Or you might have it in one eye but not the other eye as much, and you won't notice it. So I wanted to get quickly into the biotech startups aspects. So I'm hoping you leave here saying, absolutely, the retina is part of the brain, it's mapped, it's a retinal map. It can be used to alter internal comfort. There's an annual neurotech convention from the Society of Brain Mapping and Therapeutics in February of 2025. It's going to be February 27th, 28th, March 1st, and 2nd. They give discounts to students if you can prove that you're a student. It's all kinds. It's physicians, scientists, policymakers, and we're paying attention to delivering the audience to the exhibit floor and creating initiatives. So there's going to be poster sessions in the exhibit hall. So I think that they're saying if you have a poster, you get like a free registration, or you get something is discounted if you have a poster. There's receptions. And if you have a product that you come up with, because Spencer said a lot of you are making products up, showcase your products with an exhibitor space on a trade floor, or have a sponsorship program. The trade show and the conference provides you with significant opportunity to interact with recognized leaders in your field. So I wanted to thank you. An hour is too short to cover everything. And I'm more than happy to talk to you after about astigmatism, but astigmatism does not synonymously mean distortion. But it means processing certain parts of space differently from each other. And it's like moving the left side differently from the right. But if you're only looking here, it's fine. If you're only looking here, it's fine. If you're moving your eyes, it's fine. You won't be seeing distortion. But you're welcome to email me at info@mindeye.com. And thank you, Catherine, for setting this whole thing up. These were some of the demos we did. And I wanted to finish on time so that we don't take away from the other speakers.
If we have any questions for our speaker, we still have a couple more minutes.
I had extra things. I thought it's 158 because it was 156.
It's 153.
Oh, 153. Oh, then I have to. That's my astigmatism not sharpening up enough there. I can go back and finish the demonstration.
Question back here as well, properly.
Question where?
Okay, so from the bell awareness demo, we saw how when you impact vision, then your hearing is altered. Is there something you know about how when hearing is altered, how that impacts vision?
Well, do you mean vision or do you mean eyesight? Because his eyes were closed, so he didn't have any eyesight.
Well, vision means the perception inside the brain.
Yeah.
So I think it would be more vision.
Yeah, it would be. Yes, I have patients who wear hearing aids, and if they've changed their hearing aids, then it does affect where the sound location is also.
Okay.
So the answer is yeah. I affected the eyes and the retinal stimulation to affect spatial perception, but if you affect the ears, that will also affect spatial perception. The difference for my patients is that the hearing aids cost a whole lot to change, whereas the eyeglasses don't cost anywhere near as much and they're less invasive. So people would rather put the glasses on. I have brought other demonstrations for string perception. So the lady who's standing up in the back there, would you like to come into the string here?
Sure.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah, Kira?
So what is auditory processing disorder and how do you treat it specifically?
So, what is auditory processing disorder and how do I treat it? Central auditory processing or peripheral auditory processing. Typically, people talk of central auditory processing, CAPD. We treat it by measuring auditory perception of space, which is the peripheral auditory awareness. So there's a where is it and a what is it in auditory, and there's a where is it and a what is it in visual. And what we do is measure the where is it. Do you know where sounds are located? Do you know where sights are located? And we match them by putting glasses on. When people have brain injuries, a lot of times their midlines are shifted. When people have car accidents, any sort of head injuries, neck injuries, their brain is disrupted and screwed up. And the linkage between where they hear things and where they see things is not the same. So we treat all of the patients individually because the lenses used are different, but we would do the same general testing. And so we would match their eyes and ears so that they would perceive things in the same location, put the glasses on, and it lowers their overall stress. So people who've had brain injuries end up with a lot of stress, and they're in fight or flight mode a lot. So when you have a stress bucket of how much you can handle, and if you go over the stress bucket, it's too hard. So if we could take away the visual stress, the auditory stress, make them perceive the space around them, like somebody like Mario, if you could make his right side be perceived the same way as his left side, then that would take away his overall stress, lower it down, and then the fight or flight mode is not there, and you get into rest and digest mode. So I hope that answers your question. Here's a string judgment. Take this and figure out how big something is. This big, this big, this big. How big do you think it was? Nice. My last words were, you stay there. And I get here, and there you are, somewhere else.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here you go. So when you look here to here, how big do you think this is? How much string do you think? Show it to them. Do you think this is too big or too small? How many people think too big? Almost all of us. And how many think it's too small? Nobody. So let's try. It's too big by about that much. So even though she's very close to this and you're farther away, all of us could perceive that the size is incorrectly judged. So somebody like you, we would put glasses on until what you saw matched what you perceived. Because if you're off here, then when you're driving, you're trying to parallel park. It's going to make a difference.
I can't show.
You can't. So when we have patients and we do different tests, we do little tests and you can see immediately. When I say stay here and you move over there, that tells me your auditory processing is not good. When I try something here and you're missing it, it tells me your spatial processing is not good. So that to me would say, since she appears quite normal, I would say since her spatial processing is off, her temporal time processing must be exquisite. So you must be on time and really good at organizing time. Yes, she is. So when we have patients, you can figure out their personalities just from how they do on tests. So that's it. Okay. You're welcome. Thank you. My brother always laughs at me because he says, I like to play cards. I like math puzzles. And he will say to me, how can you sit for 4 hours looking at 52 pieces of paper? They're the same pieces going around and around and around. And I say, but every hand is different. And I say, when he goes to concerts, he's only listening to 8 notes. And I at least have 52 pieces of paper. He only has 8 notes. And I keep saying, no, but the concerts are way different. There's fast music, slow music, it's very, very different. The beat is different. It's a background. And with patients, it's the same way. Every single patient has a brain, and we're assessing brain function, and we're assessing disrupted brain function, which needs more testing than which was developed in the Civil War. So what I'm trying to do in Congress next month is put a bill in to mandate eye-ear connection testing, because the National Institutes of Health has an eye institute and an ear institute, but they don't look at the combination. And it's becoming more and more of a problem because it's affecting posture. And then the posture is affecting blood flow, and it becomes a downhill slope for healthcare. So anyway, thanks for letting me have the extra time. I will talk to you about astigmatism, but it's if there's something that you're saying you see normally and straight and not distorted, somewhere, whatever type of astigmatism you have, whether it's cropped this way or this way or this way, there's some difference, but it could be very, very subtle that your brain is just not bothering to pay attention to it because it doesn't need it as a contractor. So thanks again for having me.